Right, welcome back, and going to our next topic, which is the Libyan officials returning back to Cairo for a third round of talks on constitutional amendments for the Libyan elections, hopeful elections. And to highlight the issue, we have with us over the phone Ambassador Hussein Harridy, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, madam.
Your Excellency, here this is the third round of these very crucial round of talks from the Libyan concerned parties on the constitutional amendments of the elections. How do you view those talks so far before we go into what is going on the ground?
Well, I guess the international community the United Nations, the Arab League, the African Union, and of course Egypt joins all these institutions, and as well as the international community in hoping that this third and last round of constitutional consultations between the High State Council of Tripoli and the House of Representatives in Tobruk would reach an agreement on the constitutional document, which will become the framework for holding the much hoped for general elections and presidential elections in Libya. According to the Special Representative of the United Nations Secretary General, Ms. Stephanie Williams, the two parties have already agreed on many amendments to the constitutional document. And I understand that this third and last round of constitutional consultations would end tomorrow. Let's hope that by tomorrow the two representative bodies in Libya would really turn the page. Now, of course, these talks have taken place in Cairo. Cairo has already hosted the two previous rounds. They are taking place, and Libya is polarized, is divided. There are two governments in Libya. There are two parliaments in Libya. And I guess that the international community is looking forward for holding the elections. There is a consensus among UN members that Libya badly needs to turn the page and start in new stage in its history. And this won't be possible unless they are in a position to organize these elections. As you may recall, madam, there had been an agreement among various Libyan political forces to organize such elections on December 24th last year.
Indeed.
For one reason or another, these elections were postponed. And now we have a government, we have two governments in Libya, government in Tripoli that is working to hold elections sometime this year, and the parliament in Tobruk speaks about holding elections in a span of time that won't exceed 18 months from now. So let's hope that these constitutional consultations taking place in Cairo would really see an agreement among various political forces in Libya to hold the elections at an agreed upon date. As far as the
Your
date is
Excellency,
concerned,
Your
yes.
Excellency, pardon me if I disrupted the conversation here, but sir, you pinpointed your finger on the most dangerous issue, which is what is on the ground happening in Libya. Up till this minute, or these talks, unfortunately, are coming at the backdrop of the clashes between rival militias for different groups and tribes in Libya. The same ones that has disrupted early elections, then has disrupted the situation in Libya and is preventing Libyans from coming to consensus or to finding some of the bases on which they can start the real path towards a safe haven. Now, exactly how do you view this, or how do you view the strength of such talks in Cairo, and would it really reflect on the situation in Libya? Are those in talks here in Cairo or in elsewhere in the whole world, do they have the strength to really control the situation in Libya? How do you read the scene?
Well, parallel to the third round of constitutional consultations, I understand that Cairo would host another meeting for the 5+5 commission, which is the military commission, the military track of the Berlin process. And, you may recall that in October 2020, this commission reached a ceasefire agreement in Libya. And we, of course, luckily, this ceasefire has held, but there are outstanding points in the agreement that should be implemented, among which, of course, is the disbanding of the armed militias in Libya. But these armed militias in Libya, they do work, they do operate for some interests, whether Libyan interests or regional or international interests. Regardless of what would happen tomorrow, we have two scenarios as far as the constitutional consultations are concerned. Either they reach an agreement on a final constitutional document, in the context of which the Libyan people would be called to general elections and presidential elections. And the other scenario is the stalemate, no agreement on a final constitutional document. And this, of course, would give more power, more influence to the armed militias. Why? Because the failure to reach an agreement on a final constitutional document would mean on the ground that special vested interests in Libya, whether in the east or the west, have interests to keep the status quo as it is. The status quo as it is does not only pose a problem to the security and stability and the future prosperity of the Libyan people, but to the security of neighboring countries, among which Egypt. So hopefully, we'll see tomorrow an agreement on a final constitutional document, and on the other hand, an agreement in the context of the talks that would be held within the military commission, the 5+5 commission, that would take place in Cairo. an agreement on really the most urgent task, which is the disbanding of the militias. Having said that, disbanding the militias won't be easy. We need, in order to reach a stage where we can say we'll start tackling the question of the militias, we need some preconditions. The most important of which is one government in Libya that enjoys legitimacy, a government that would come out of elections, and the second thing, one parliament that represents the Libyan people, and thirdly, an international legitimacy. In other words, a resolution adopted by the Security Council supporting the new Libyan government. So, before speaking or discussing the issue of the how are we going to disband the armed militias in Libya, first, Libya needs a unified political authority. And when I say political authority, I refer to an executive branch, judicial branch, and a legislative branch
Indeed.
that enjoys popular legitimacy as well as Arab regional and international legitimacy matter.
You just said exactly what Libya needs for its own stability and security, Your Excellency, here. But if I may ask you here, my last question on this issue, is it up to the Libyans or is it up to the international community's will to resolve the issue in Libya? And I'm speaking here because we are, it is not just the Libyan situation, or we're speaking about a world crisis that is ongoing right now. And the Libyan chaotic situation is not going to resolve any of the world problems, but rather will add to them. How do you view that, and what is needed from the world community towards Libya?
Well, I see your point, madam, but my personal take on this issue is that it's up to the Libyans themselves to work out their problems. If there is an regional intervention or international intervention in Libyan affairs, this is not the cause of Libyan problems, but an effect, a result of the insecurity, instability, lack of political consensus in Libya. So it's up, personally speaking, I believe that the responsibility of saving Libya from more insecurity, more instability, more economic chaos, the responsibility lies squarely with the Libyans themselves. As long as the Libyans cannot speak with one voice,
Yes.
cannot act with one voice, as long as the Libyans don't have a representative government, they don't have a representative parliament, they don't have an independent judiciary, I believe that the international community, with all the goodwill in the world, cannot help the Libyans out of this case. So, personally speaking, the ball has always been in the court of the Libyans and no one else.
Yes. Remains to be seen. Your Excellency, Ambassador Hussein Harridy, former Assistant Foreign Minister, we thank you so much for your input here over the Libyan issue. And before we leave you, let's have this quick report. And I guess that would take us to the end of the episode. Next Saturday would be other important Arab topics until Saturday. We'll leave you now with this report.
The Chiefs of Staff of the Eastern and Western regions of the Libyan Army, Lieutenant General Abdelrazak al-Nadouri and Lieutenant General Mohammed al-Haddad, respectively arrived in Cairo on Thursday to attend the Joint Military Committee 5+5. Hosted by Cairo, the meetings of the Libyan Joint Military Committee 5+5 launched on Wednesday to build on achievements of the committee since the signing of the ceasefire agreement in Libya in October 2020. Meanwhile, the United Nations Support Mission in Libya confirmed that the members of the Libyan Military Committee 5+5 will discuss during the meetings the options for the full implementation of the comprehensive ceasefire agreement and will coordinate efforts and arrangements for the withdrawal of foreign fighters and mercenaries out of Libya. The meetings take place in the presence and under the sponsorship of the UN Support Mission in Libya and the United Nations Secretary General Special Advisor for Libya, Stephanie Williams. Cairo also hosted the third round of the Libyan Constitutional Track meetings under the auspices of the UNSMIL and in the presence of the House of Representatives and a High Council of State Committees. The third round aimed to reach a constitutional path in order to hold presidential and parliamentary elections in Libya. The talks in Cairo come few weeks after brief clashes took place between rival forces in Tripoli as Libyan parliament-appointed Prime Minister Fathi Bashagha attempted to enter the capital, the seat of his rival Prime Minister Abdelhamid al-Dibeiba. Cairo's support of the meetings come within the framework of the Egyptian vision and efforts that support a Libyan solution to the Arab country's crisis away from foreign interference.